My parents said I was embarrassing and didn't belong at Christmas dinner. So I left, quietly cut the utilities, and watched their perfect holiday collapse until the real provider was exposed. I knocked on the door, shifting the heavy grocery bag in my hand. Snow crunched under my boots. My coat smelled like hay and diesel, but that was just part of my life. The door opened. AC-back Mom stood there, tight-lipped. "John," she hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. "Maybe this isn't the best time." I frowned. "I eat Christmas dinner starting soon." From inside, I heard my brother Travis snort. "Yeah, for family." I blinked. "What?" Travis appeared behind Mom, arms crossed over his fancy sweater. "Look, man, we talked it over, and you don't really fit in with what we've got going on here." I stared at him. "I don't fit in." Mom winced. "It's just, you always show up smelling like a barn tracking in mud, wearing those same ripped jeans." "I own a barn," I said deadpan. Travis smirked. Something cold settled in my chest. I glanced past them. Inside, the house was warm, golden light spilling over a long dinner table covered in food. My niece and nephew were playing by the tree, their little faces bright with laughter. And here I was, standing in the freezing cold, being told I wasn't welcome. Mom sighed. "You understand, don't you, honey? We have guests, important ones, and it'd be easier if I what?" I cut in. "Didn't embarrass y'all?" Travis didn't even flinch. "Come on, John, you get it. You're still out there on that land, knee-deep in cow manure, while the rest of us moved up. We've got reputations to maintain." I huffed a laugh. "Unbelievable. I own more land than half the folks in this county," I said. "I make more money in a month than you do in a year, Travis, but sure, go ahead, tell me how you're better than me." His smirk faltered, but Mom cut in quickly. "It's not about money, sweetheart," she said gently. "It's just, well, Travis and his friends, they have a certain image, and, well, you're a little rough around the edges." I exhaled sharply through my nose. "Right," I said. "Got it." I shifted the bag in my arms, then, without another word, set it down on the porch. Inside were presents, expensive ones, thoughtful ones. I spent hours picking them out for these people. Then I turned and walked back to my truck. I sat in my truck, engine rumbling softly, phone pressed to my ear. "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Shut off the electricity and water at 154 Old Road. Name on the account, John Callahan." The customer service lady hesitated. "Sir, are you sure?" "The temperatures are dangerously low this week," I exhaled, watching my breath curl in the cold air. "Yeah, I'm sure." She clicked away on her keyboard. "All right, the request has been processed. The shutdown will take effect in—" I hung up before she could finish. They didn't want me in their lives? Fine, let's see how well they managed without my money. I sat in my truck, watching the house in the rearview mirror, my breath fogging up the windshield. The Christmas lights still twinkled on the front porch, but inside I knew my family was scrambling. I could already imagine Mom fumbling with the thermostat, Dad cursing under his breath as the power shut off, and Travis was probably yelling at them to call me. My phone vibrated on the dashboard. Mom calling. I let it ring, then another. Dad calling, then another. Mom again. I finally picked up, putting her on speaker. "John, the power just went out." Mom's voice was frantic. I stayed quiet for a second, letting her panic settle in. "Yeah," I finally said. "That happens when you don't pay the bill." "What? You remember, Mom," I said evenly. "That contract you had me sign years ago, the one that put all the utilities under my name so y'all wouldn't have to deal with them? You said it'd be easier that way, remember? Since I had a steady income and Travis was still figuring things out. You know, the same Travis you just chose over me." "John, this isn't funny," she snapped. "Your father and I need that power." I leaned back, gripping the wheel. "Guess you should have thought of that before you told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas." Dad's gruff voice cut in. "Son, this is childish. Just pay the bill and stop acting out." I laughed, shaking my head. "Funny, that's what you always say, huh? Every time Travis screws up, I'm the one who's got to fix it, pay the bill, cover the damage, clean up his mess." Mom hesitated. "Sweetheart, it's not like that." "Isn't it?" I shot back. I closed my eyes and the memories flooded in. Travis was always the golden one, the star athlete, the life of the party, the kid everyone adored. Meanwhile, I had to work for everything. When I got a scholarship to A&M, Dad barely acknowledged it. When I saved up to buy my first truck at 18, Mom scoffed and said Travis would have a real car one day. No matter how hard I worked, how much I earned, it was never enough to shake the image they had of me, the other son, the backup plan. And yet, when Travis dropped out of college, racked up debt, and couldn't hold a job, guess who they called? When his mortgage payments were late, when his kids needed school supplies, when he and Kelly couldn't afford Christmas presents, it was always, John can help. John makes good money. John will take care of it. And I did, because deep down, I kept hoping that if I gave enough, if I did enough, maybe one day they'd see me the way they saw him. But tonight was the final nail in the coffin. You know what, Dad? I exhaled. You're right. I am done acting out. No more games, no more help, no more covering for Travis. John, don't do this, Mom pleaded. I already did, I said, reaching for the ignition. And if I were y'all, I'd grab some blankets. Heard it's dropping to 15 degrees tonight. And with that, I hung up. They wanted me out of their lives? Fine, let's see how well they managed without my help. That night, they all had to sleep in the living room by the fireplace, wrapped in blankets, their breath visible in the cold air. The grand Christmas dinner they had planned fell apart. Guests left early, muttering complaints as they pulled on their coats, shaking their heads at the disaster unfolding before them. The perfectly decorated table, the expensive dishes Mom had spent days preparing, all of it sat untouched because no one wanted to eat in a freezing house. Travis's kids were sent to the neighbor's house for the night, bundled up and whining, not understanding why they couldn't stay home. Even Kelly, his wife, had gone quiet, offering no words of comfort as she watched her husband pace angrily by the fireplace. Mom sat with a thick blanket draped over her shoulders, staring at the dying embers with an exhausted expression. Dad sipped at his drink in silence, jaw clenched so tightly it looked like he might break a tooth. This is ridiculous, Travis finally snapped, running a hand through his hair. He wants to act like a spoiled brat, fine, but dragging the whole family into this? Who does he think he is? Enough, Travis, Mom sighed, rubbing her temples. We just need to talk to him in the morning. He wouldn't actually leave us like this. He just wants attention. Dad grunted. Boy always had a chip on his shoulder, always had something to prove. Travis scoffed. Yeah, well, he proved it. Morning came and my phone rang. Mom calling. I let it ring. Then Dad. Then Mom again. I took my time, enjoying the warmth of my house, sipping my coffee as I stared out over my land. The cattle didn't care about Christmas drama. The ranch kept running, just like it always did. A few minutes later, a text popped up from Travis. You happy now? You ruined Christmas. Hope it was worth it. I chuckled, shaking my head. Yeah, it was. Then another call. This time I picked up. John, Mom's voice was hoarse, exhausted. Do you know what you've done? We spent the whole night freezing. The kids had to go to the neighbors. The guests all left early. You ruined Christmas. I let the silence stretch for a second, then took another slow sip of my coffee. I didn't ruin anything, I said finally. I just stopped paying for it. Dad's voice came next, sharp and cold. Enough of this nonsense. You've made your point. Now turn the power back on. I smirked. No, Mom let out a shaky breath. John, please. You can't just do this to your own family. I barked out a short laugh. Family, I echoed. That's rich, coming from the people who locked me out on Christmas Eve. Guess that only counted when y'all were the ones doing it, huh? You're being dramatic, Mom tried. Am I? I shot back. Because from where I'm sitting, all I did was finally treat y'all the way you treat me. You know what? That's not true, Dad growled. I leaned back in my chair, stretching out my legs. All right, let's go over this real slow then, I said, my voice smooth and even. You needed someone to handle the bills? I did it. You needed the heat fixed. I covered it. You needed someone to make sure Travis's kids had a good Christmas every single year? That was me too. And what did I get for it? What did I get for all those years of taking care of this family? Silence. That's right, I muttered. Not a single thing except a door slammed in my face. Mom sniffled on the other end of the line. Then Travis spoke, his voice venomous. You think this is funny? He spat. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. You just had to make a scene, didn't you? I wasn't even there, I reminded him. Y'all were the ones making a scene. I just finally let you deal with the consequences. You're completely insane, he hissed. What kind of brother does the kind that got tired of being used? I said simply, taking another sip of coffee. Travis cursed quietly. I could hear Mom trying to stifle another sob, Dad muttering something about me being stubborn and ungrateful. I smiled to myself. Merry Christmas, y'all, I said. Then I hung up. I tossed my phone onto the table and leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The silence in my house was peaceful. No yelling, no guilt-tripping, no expectations. Just me, my coffee, and the warmth of my fully functioning heating system. It was a stark contrast to the chaos I imagined was still unfolding at my parents' place. Travis's text popped up in my mind. You happy now? You ruined Christmas. Hope it was worth it. Was I happy? Not exactly, but I wasn't unhappy either. For the first time in years, I felt free. I got up, pulled on my boots, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, the kind of cold that bit at your skin but felt refreshing when you breathed it in. The ranch stretched out before me, covered in a thin layer of frost. The cattle were gathered by the feeding troughs, their breath rising in misty clouds. They didn't care about family crossa. Neither did the frozen grass beneath my boots or the sky turning pale blue with the morning sun. I walked toward the barn, hands in my pockets, thinking about how different my morning was from my family's. Mom was probably still curled up by the fireplace, wrapped in every blanket they owned. Dad would be frustrated, pacing around, grumbling about how ungrateful I was. And Travis? Oh, I had no doubt Travis was still fuming, probably calling everyone he knew to tell them what a disgrace I was for turning off the power. I should have felt guilty. I didn't. Instead, I felt like I had finally done something that should have happened years ago. They had spent so much time making me feel like I owed them, like it was my duty to take care of them, to put their needs before my own. And for what? For this? For a family that tossed me aside the second I wasn't useful to them? I shook my head, walking into the barn. A few of the ranch hands were already there, feeding the cattle and breaking the ice in the water troughs. One of them, an older guy named Mark, gave me a nod. "Christmas drama?" he asked, smirking as he checked the feed levels. I had to laugh. "Something like that." Mark chuckled. "Yeah, I remember those days. Haven't talked to my folks in years. Best decision I ever made." I didn't respond. Instead, I just grabbed a bucket of grain and started working alongside him. The morning passed in a blur of chores, and by the time I got back to the house, I had nearly forgotten about my phone. Nearly. When I finally checked it, there were more missed calls, a few voicemails. I ignored them, but one text caught my attention. It was from Kelly, Travis's wife. "Hey, I just wanted to say I understand. I don't agree with what happened. I told Travis he went too far. I know you've done a lot for us, more than he'll ever admit. Just wanted you to know that." I stared at the message for a long moment, then set my phone down. Maybe not all of them were beyond saving. That night, I sat on my porch with a beer in my hand, watching the stars. It was quiet, peaceful. Then headlights appeared in the distance, bouncing along the dirt road toward my house. I sighed, already knowing who it was. Sure enough, Dad's truck rolled to a stop in front of the house, and the doors swung open. Dad stepped out first, arms crossed, face like thunder. Travis followed, looking just as irritated. Mom stayed in the truck, watching from behind the windshield. They didn't even wait for me to speak. "You done with this nonsense?" Dad snapped, marching up the steps. I leaned against the railing, staying relaxed. "Good to see you too, Dad." "Turn the power back on," Travis demanded. "The house is freezing, Mom's exhausted, the guests left, and the kids had to sleep at the neighbors. You've made your point." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean you've made your point, Travis? The one where you decided I wasn't welcome because I didn't meet your standards? That point?" Travis clenched his jaw. "You didn't have to take it this far." Dad's nostrils flared. "Enough. You're going to stop this foolishness and do right by your family. You owe us that much." I stood up slowly, setting my beer down. "Oh, you?" I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. Dad hesitated for a split second, but then doubled down. "Darn right you do. After everything we've done for you?" I let out a sharp laugh. "Everything you've done for me?" Travis crossed his arms. "Yeah, John. We raised you, made sure you had food, clothes, a roof over your head. And this is how you repay us?" I exhaled, shaking my head. "Wow, you really believe that, don't you? You think feeding your own kid and putting a roof over his head is some grand favor?" I asked, my voice low. "That's called being a parent, Travis. It's the bare minimum. You don't get a standing ovation for that." Silence. "You want to talk about who owes who?" I continued, stepping forward. "Let's talk about what I gave you. Who covered the bills when you couldn't pay them? Who made sure your kids had everything they needed? Who kept Mom and Dad's house running when they didn't want to deal with it?" Travis looked away. "You took everything from me," I said, voice cold. "And the one time I say no, suddenly I'm the villain?" Dad exhaled sharply. "John, son, you're making this bigger than it needs to be." I shook my head. "No, I'm finally making it the right size." Mom finally stepped out of the truck, her eyes tired, voice soft. "Sweetheart, please. We don't want this to be the way things are." I turned to her. "You don't want this?" I asked, and for the first time my voice wavered slightly. "I didn't want this either, but y'all made it real clear where I stand in this family, and I finally got the message." She looked like she wanted to cry. Dad sighed. "So what? That's it? You just cut us off, leave us in the cold?" I met his eyes. "I finally learned that you only love me when I'm useful to you." I paused, shaking my head. "And I ain't interested in that kind of love anymore." Travis muttered a curse under his breath. Dad exhaled sharply. Mom just whispered. I walked past them toward the front door. Before stepping inside, I turned back one last time. "Merry Christmas," I said. Then I shut the door. For the first time in my life, I truly didn't care if they called again. I didn't check my phone the next day. Didn't need to. I already knew how it would go. Mom crying, Dad fuming, Travis cursing my name to anyone who would listen. Same old story, different day. But by midday, when I stepped out onto the porch, I spotted something I hadn't expected. Travis's truck. He was parked at the end of my driveway, pacing in the cold, hands clenched into fists, breath coming out in sharp clouds, like he was working himself up for something. I sighed, grabbed my jacket, and walked toward him. "You lost?" Travis turned sharply, eyes wild. "You think this is funny?" I folded my arms. "Depends. What part?" He took a step closer, his whole body tense. "You ruined my life." That almost made me laugh. Oh, and here I thought I'd just stop paying for it. Travis clenched his teeth. "You don't get it, do you? Kelly took the kids and went to stay with her parents. She said she's tired of the stress and needs space. She thinks I'm a screw-up, John, because of you." I raised an eyebrow. "Because of me? Or because she finally saw what I've been seeing my whole life?" His face went red. "I lost everything. And I lost years taking care of a grown man who never once said thank you." I shot back. "Forgive me if I don't feel sorry for you." Travis was breathing hard, shoulders rising and falling like he wanted to fight me right there in the dirt. I tilted my head. "Go on then," I said. "Take a swing. See if that fixes your problems." For a second, I thought he actually would. His fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. But he didn't, because deep down he knew he needed me more than I ever needed him. His shoulders sagged. "Just turn it back on, ma'am," he muttered. "Fix this." "No." He looked up sharply. "No? You heard me," I said. "I'm done cleaning up your mess." His face twisted in frustration. "We're family," I let out a short laugh. "Funny how that only matters when you need something." Travis opened his mouth, then shut it. For the first time in his life, he didn't have a comeback. He just stood there, his anger shifting into something else. Panic. Because this time, he realized I wasn't bluffing. "You don't mean this," he said, shaking his head. "You can't." "I do," I said simply. "And I can." The wind picked up, biting through our coats. Travis looked away, scuffing his boot against the dirt. "Dad's really mad," he muttered. "Mom won't stop crying." I exhaled through my nose. "Not my problem anymore." His head snapped back up. "It is your problem. You're the reason they're suffering." I scoffed. "No, Travis, you are. You and Dad with your arrogance, Mom with her excuses. You're all real good at pointing fingers, but not one of you ever stopped to ask why I had to be the one keeping everything together in the first place." Travis ran a hand down his face, his frustration boiling over. "Fine. You want me to say it? You were the responsible one, the one who worked hard, the one who actually had money. That's why it was your job to help." I narrowed my eyes. "No, Travis. That's why it was easier to dump on me. Doesn't mean it was right." Silence. The weight of my words seemed to hit him then. His breathing slowed, his shoulders dropped. He knew I was right. Finally, he let out a bitter laugh. "You know, Dad always said you had a chip on your shoulder, that you were jealous of me." I huffed a quiet laugh. "Jealous of what? The handouts, the constant failures, the way Mom and Dad treated you like the second coming of Christ no matter how bad you screwed up?" Travis flinched. I shook my head. "Nah, I was never jealous of you, Travis. I pitied you." His jaw tightened. "You really mean that?" "I do," I said. For a long moment he just stood there, staring at me, as if trying to recognize the brother he once knew, the one who always caved, always forgave, always took the fall. But that John was gone. Finally, he exhaled and took a step back. "Fine," he muttered. "You want to do this? You want to walk away?" "Already did." Travis looked like he wanted to say more, but instead he just shook his head, turned, and climbed into his truck. The tires kicked up dirt as he peeled out, disappearing down the road. I didn't watch him go. I turned around, walked back up the porch, and shut the door. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one losing something. I was the one letting go. Update. Well, that escalated quickly. I did not expect this post to blow up the way it did. I've been reading through the comments and I see that a lot of people have very strong opinions on what I did. Some of you think I went too far, some think I did exactly what needed to be done, and some of you think I'm the worst person to ever walk the earth. So let's address some of the biggest comments I've seen. "You left your own parents to freeze? What kind of person does that?" All right, let's get one thing straight. I didn't leave them to freeze. I turned off the power, yes, but their fireplace was working just fine and they had plenty of blankets. No one was in danger. If I really wanted to be cruel, I could have done this in the middle of a snowstorm or during an actual emergency. Instead, I chose to do it when they had plenty of options. Also, let's not forget, they were the ones who told me I wasn't welcome on Christmas. They made it clear I wasn't part of the family, so why should my money be? You could have just talked to them instead of pulling a stunt like this. Oh, you sweet summer child, do you really think I never tried to talk to them? I spent years trying to set boundaries, trying to explain that I wasn't an ATM, trying to tell them I couldn't keep covering everything. You know what happened every single time? I was met with guilt trips, manipulation, and empty promises that things would change. You know what finally made them realize I was serious? This. They didn't care when I was exhausted from work, struggling to balance my own expenses. But the moment they had to experience even a fraction of what I dealt with for years, suddenly it was a crisis. You should have just cut them off permanently instead of playing games. I get why some people feel that way, but here's the thing. I didn't want to cut them off forever. I just wanted them to finally understand what I'd been dealing with, and guess what? It worked. What happened after? Since a lot of people have been asking for an update, here's how things played out. After my last post, on the third day, I turned the power back on. I had no intention of leaving them in the dark forever. I just needed them to get a taste of what life without my financial help would be like. And when I did turn it back on, you know what happened? No one went bankrupt. No one lost their house. You know what actually happened? They simply adjusted. Turns out my parents did have enough money to cover the bills. They just didn't want to. They had been using my money to afford luxuries while letting me handle the boring essentials like heating and electricity. Once they realized I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore, they simply started living within their means. They still had a nice house. They still had food on the table. The only difference? They weren't living off of me anymore. And here's the kicker. After about a month, my parents actually apologized. Mom called me and admitted that they had taken me for granted, that they had let Travis influence them too much, that they had been wrong. And honestly, that meant the world to me. For the first time in years, it felt like they actually saw me as more than just a wallet. But did it last? Now here's the part where you all get to place your bets, because after a few months of peace, guess what started happening? The calls, the little comments. "Oh John, we're just a little short this month. Could you cover the water bill just this once?" At first I ignored it. Then, when it didn't stop, I reminded them what happened the last time they tried to treat me like an ATM. They backed off. For now.